podcast tonight. All right, it's Tuesday night, and you know what that means. It is time for TCR Live, and I am joined by the immensely talented Jackie Samaniego. How are you, Jackie?
I'm doing good, Joe. How are you?
I am, what was the word I used? Thriving, right?
Thriving.
I am thriving. So I'm
Thriving.
doing really well, and I'm glad to be joined by you. And you went to the game, right? So
I did go to the game.
we're talking about that a little bit, but before we get anything, just tell us about what your experience was at the game. Just, kind of let the audience know a little bit of what you thought that was like.
So this was my homecoming. I've been in Virginia for 2.5 years. The last time I was at a game was the Texans. I was pregnant at the time, so it was a little different experience for me overall. So it just felt really good to be back home at State Farm Stadium where I feel at home because I've been to a lot of games where season ticket holders. The energy, you could tell there's a general consensus that the team's not going to be good, but the fans are still there to support. They kind of know what to expect with this team. So our energy was pretty good, especially through the first half.
Right,
Second
right.
half, it slowly died, but not walking out. There wasn't it wasn't depressing. It wasn't any frustration. It was more just, yeah, cards. Cards are gonna cards.
What are you gonna do, right? So
What are you gonna do?
overall, it was a pretty good experience. So being back there for a game, it sounds like.
Yes, and no fights, thank God.
Oh my goodness, that's I don't know. That is such an annoying thing. You see now everyone's showing these on social media fights, and I mean I know that happens, but it almost feels like people are getting into it more because just don't. How about just don't? Be cool to one another, but what are you gonna do, right? So real quick, let me
Yeah.
say hey to some of the folks in the chat. We got Mikey, Desert Cardinal. Thank you for being here. Appreciate you hanging out with us, Mikey. We got Agent 47 after what I saw this past week. We need to draft 2 defenders in our first picks unless Marvin Harrison Jr. is available. Ben Cork, one of our friends from Canada. Thanks for hanging out with us. Just landed back home this evening. I was also at the awesome, Ben. Man, I'm jealous. I'm glad you got to enjoy that. Nope. Ben says fight in section 115, 2 Giants fans.
Oh man.
Oh, dang. Of course. Well, it's Giants fans, right? So Nick L, who gets fired first? Pittsburgh or the DC? Neither. They're going to
Neither.
give him time. They're going to give him time, right? So, no worries. We got AZ Esports Cards. Let's go. Thanks for being here. We got Talking Jets with Tigo. I did a really fun mock draft live stream with Tigo before the season and had a blast. Tigo is a good dude, knows his stuff. One of these days we're going to, get something together as far as a collab. Tigo, thanks for dropping in. Y'all check out his channel. Fault covers the Jets, obviously, right now. That's a lot of tears in Jetsland. But Tigo's a good guy. He was a lot of fun to talk to. So appreciate you popping in, my friend. So we're going to talk about the game that was kind of the big picture takeaways, where we feel about, where the Cards are at right now, and maybe a few other things. And then we'll get some, questions and comments from the chat up in here. So let's go back and forth real quick and just kind of talk about, kind of key takeaways. So what was one of the first things you took away from that game, Jackie?
First and foremost, I think I posted about it on Twitter. You give Josh Dobbs more than 2 weeks, and he will change your mind. This is why you trade a 5th-round pick for him. This is why you don't start Clayton Tune, because it was almost a night and day difference of what we saw from week 1 to week 2. And that's all you needed. Give it a little time. Everybody was crying for Clayton Tune. I knew what you're gonna get out of Clayton Tune. It wasn't what you got out of Josh Dobbs in that game. Granted, it kind of fizzled out a little bit in the second half, and he played like a backup quarterback. He kind of reminded me a little bit of Colt McCoy when he came in last year or the year before to kind of hold the fort down for Kyler. He's not going to steal the starting job. He's not going to be the quarterback one of the future, but he's going to manage the game. He's going to make a play. He's going to get you some points, and that's what he did. So yeah, he looked a lot sharper, and you got to build that chemistry with your receivers. And then right now, especially the tight ends, because we're running a pretty tight end heavy scheme. So he was finally hitting his target. Shout out Kyle Odegaard. I got this stat from him. Um, Josh Dobbs posted a, what is it, 75.8 QBR total QBR rating,
Mm.
which was better than Patrick Mahomes, Justin Herbert, and Matthew Stafford, and finished top 10. He was 21 of 31 passes. Let's see, 200. I have these written down, sorry. 228 yards, 3 carries for 41 yards. And he got a little bit on that touchdown run. So that was refreshing to see. He did use his legs more. Um, but yeah, I was really impressed with what I saw. And granted, it's still a loss, but you can kind of hang your hat on. We did get a backup quarterback that's worth a damn.
Right. And AZ Esports, Jackie with the stat, mic drop, sheesh, whoop, whoop. Yeah. So, I replied, I think, to your tweet, like, if only there was a podcast that had said,
That, yeah,
let's be patient
explicitly.
with Dobbs, right?
Yeah.
Explicitly. And obviously I set, I tuned in for the Redbird Red Zone podcast. Great work y'all do over there. If you're not checking them out, you need to check them out on AZ Sports Underground. But you all were talking about this, and we talked a little bit about this on my live stream last week, but you guys really got into this conversation. Everyone was down on Josh Dobbs, and I get it, right? That he really struggled, those fumbles in that Washington game. I get it. But like you guys talked about, he just came into the building not too long ago. Yes, he was familiar with the system because of his time with Cleveland, but you need to give him some time to get acclimated to everything. And then, you know what? He looked good. I mean, he graded well. He had that really nice, angry touchdown run. He looked solid. He overthrew Ertz on that one deep pass I think Kyler would have made. But this is what you get with a backup quarterback. No one is looking at Dobbs as the long-term starter. What we're looking at him as is a backup who has familiarity with the system and is smart and can drive the bus till Kyler gets back. And he was, and I agree, and I still felt this way after the Washington game. He was the better choice than Clayton Tune. The rookie is exciting. He looked good in the preseason at points, but he was also playing third stringers for a lot of that. They played Tune extended minutes. And I think if he was in there, it would have been a lot more turnovers.
Right.
I still like Tune as a guy you want to kind of develop as a long-term backup, but Dobbs was the right choice. It showed up, and kudos to y'all for seeing that. I'm going to go with kind of one of my takeaways, and that was, and this is something I talked about last night on the Making the Grade live stream. And if you're tuning into this, you haven't seen it, every Monday night, I'm going to be doing a live stream where I look at the PFF grades and talk about the stories that the data are telling us. And one of the things I saw was continued development of Trey McBride. He looked really good. If you look at the PFF grades, he only had a couple receptions, but his snap count increased from the previous week. His grade was good. And we're seeing that development. And I do feel like by the end of the season, he's going to kind of overtake Ertz as the tight end one.
Yes.
Maybe it's a little bit of a bold take, but I think that's what's going to happen. So it's nice to see the continued development of Trey McBride as that, the second round tight end who has that pedigree, who can block and catch the ball. And to me, he actually looks a little bit like a younger Zach Ertz in terms of how he plays receiving. It's a little bit uncanny. So what are your thoughts on that? And then what would be your next kind of takeaway after that?
I think I've talked about it here on this show. I was a bit of a Trey McBride hater.
Okay.
Was very upset that we drafted him in the second round of this last year's draft. But he is kind of coming around, he is making the big plays. He's doing the grunt work, he's doing the blocking. And you're right, he does kind of remind me of a little Zach Ertz. And he's 85 and Ertz is 86. So like seeing it live Sunday, granted I'm in the stands and I can barely see, but I'm like, oh, that was a nice catch by Ertz. And they're like, oh, Trey McBride. I'm like, oops. But it's good. That's what you want to see out of him, for being such a high draft pick, for, being on a rookie contract. And if Zach Ertz keeps playing very well, you might get something for him at the deadline, and then, McBride takes the reins. So we'll see.
Yeah. So what would be your next kind of takeaway from the game?
James Conner in this run game, solid. This is NFL level offense. Um, this is exactly what you wanted to see in the Cliff eras, that we just couldn't get that run game going, but now it's starting to get established. My only fear, though, Connor had 23 carries, and he was the only running back that really had any kind of positives during this game. I know we saw Demicardo a couple times, not a whole lot of gain there. I just fear that this isn't a sustainable offense going forward for 17 games because of Connor's injury history. So if you can get better production out of your backups, then we can preserve Connor and then maybe carry him into next year, because I don't, I I'm not sure what his contract situation's like, but I'd like to still have him around, especially when Kyler comes back, get the running game really going. But we saw a lot of great runs from him. He's tough. I love the whole pounding it forward. We're done with this horizontal, sideline to sideline running backs. We need someone that can move forward. And if we can get the rest of the running backs going, I would like to just save James Conner for like big third downs, or just goal at the goal line.
Yeah, for sure. AZ Esports Cards loving what he saw out of James Conner running angry. Nick L saying James Conner may have trade value as well. Maybe. I don't think they're going to do that. I think he has 1 year left on his contract. I think based on the money, if they wanted to release him after this year, they could. I don't know that they will. I think he's a good guy to keep around. I love what I'm seeing from James Conner. You're right. We need it. Keontae Ingram graded reasonably well, but there wasn't a lot of production with that, and it's limited snaps. So we really do want to see Keontae Ingram kind of get in there and produce a bit to kind of at least spell James Conner, and take some snaps so he can kind of get a little bit of a break. But also you want to have someone you can trust if Conner does get injured, which we don't want to see that, but it's absolutely a possibility for sure. But I do like what I've seen out of Conner. I love James Conner. He's so good. He runs hard. He can catch the ball. He's not the fastest, but he gives you everything. So I think he's kind of underrated. I'm going to say hey to some of the other folks that have jumped in before I get into the next, takeaway. Lance says, are we firing everyone? Hello, just bringing the heat. Yeah. Appreciate you being here. Thanks for hanging out with us, Lance. Cruz Aspuro. How do power rankings have us last? Makes no sense to me. Yeah. I'm not surprised. They love and hate on the Cardinals. I was looking at this. Kyle Odegaard tweeted this out, and I looked it up myself. If you're familiar with DVOA, the website that no longer exists, Football Outsiders, I tried looking up that website and it's shut down. But the DVOA, which is kind of an overall efficiency measure, it is still available on another site. The guy who produces it, I think it's Aaron Schatz, has it somewhere else. But the Cardinals were 18th in DVOA, which is I think that's DVOA is a pretty good measure of efficiency. It takes into account situational kinds of things. And I do think the Cardinals are better than people give them credit for. They're not a great team. They're one of the worst teams right now, but they've been in these games. So we'll see what happens down the road, though. Jordan P., thanks for being here. Dobbs Web 28, can't ask for anything better. From a backup quarterback, 100%. Agent 47, can we please talk about Marco Wilson on the bench? Marco Wilson had a bad game, graded in the 20s. So we talked about on the live stream last night. It was rough. Calvin, thanks for being here. Agreed that our young players are really showing up. First day I heard a few media heads vocally give props and the credit the Cards for what they've done over the past few weeks. It's nice to see the development. Mike Horn, are we going to win at least one game? I think we're going to win multiple games, not a ton of them. But just listen, we're gonna struggle the next couple of games. We've got some really tough, opponents, Cowboys, 49ers, but we've got the Texans on the docket. I think we got the Bears later in the season. This team is gutting it out and playing hard football and playing, yes, it was disappointing, but think about it this way. If someone told you, okay, we know this is a rough season, but the first 2 weeks, the Cardinals are going to be in it and they're going to lose by just a couple points, right? You in a vacuum, you would have been like, okay, we know this team isn't great, but maybe the coaching, they're not getting blown out. The coaching is maybe taking hold a little bit. the way it worked out, I called my reaction video "Hope is Cruel" because like the first half gave us all hope, and then just the way it went away. So it wasn't a good. It was bad. You should not give up that lead. But this team is lacking talent, and they just need to develop those players. The roster just isn't. They don't have the horses to run with the better teams in the NFL or even the mediocre teams right now. That's just reality. But they're coaching them up, so I think they're going to win some games. And remember, I think Kyler will come back and play this year. I know some people think he's going to sit the whole year out. I don't think he will. So if Kyler comes back half of the season and your defense is at least playing halfway decent football like they've shown an ability to do at points, and the offense has Kyler, I think they're going to win a few. So we'll see though, right? Chris Young, hey, stream peeps, thanks for being here. Appreciate you hanging out with us. Yep, Buddha out. Ouch, that certainly hurts for sure. Keith Davis, thanks for hopping in here. I appreciate your effort to use real statistics to bring more objectiveness cards analysis. Thank you, Keith. I appreciate that your kind feedback. Listen, that's professionally what I do involves a lot of data. I teach sociology. I'm an empirical kind of person, so that's how I approach this: is try to have some basis for that. So, all right. So let me kind of get to my next takeaway. Is that the offensive line isn't as bad as everyone outside of Arizona thought it would be. And this is one of those things I've said going into this year is like, listen, yeah, it's not going to be a great offensive line, but they've brought in some NFL players drafted. Like, it's going to be an okay offensive line. It not the best, but it's not going to be like as bad as it was last year. And the offensive line overall hasn't been as bad with one exception. Elijah Wilkinson, the guy they brought in, who I wanted them to, when I did my Fixing the Cardinals video way back in the day, he was one of those free agents. I'm like, hey, bring him in because he can play guard and tackle. He's versatile. And I was happy when they signed him. And throughout his career, he's graded in the 60s. That's a decent starter. It's not elite, but that's kind of a solid starter. And his grades have been in the 30s. He had those, I think back-to-back false start penalties. Elijah Wilkinson has really, really struggled, and I'm hoping he gets it together. Otherwise, we need to start someone else. And we got a super chat from Cruz Espero. Also, I'm bringing this up right now. Thank you, Cruz. It's offensive line related. I was wondering, why did Luke Whippler fall so far in the draft? Why didn't we draft him? Random question. The things I was hearing is people didn't like his arm length. That's why they thought his arms were not long enough. So listen, that's a guy I was hoping they were going to take, and especially when he started sliding. So, but thank you for the super chat, Cruz. I really appreciate that. And as you being a channel member, you've been one of those core supporters for a long time. Thank you so much. Tyler, real quick, I've actually been impressed by this squad considering how low talent level this team is. Well coached, or Cliff was just so bad that everything didn't look smart. Even competent looks marvelous, right? Yeah, I think they're coaching it well. But yeah, so offensive line, if Wilkinson doesn't get benched going into this next game, if they do start him again, he better have a good game, a much better game, or they're going to need to bring someone else. They've got a couple people, that they might bring in, that they might start in his place, but it was ugly. So aside from that, though, there's some hope. I mean, DJ Humphries has been a little up and down, but he's been okay. Paris Johnson Jr., for a rookie who's starting at a position that wasn't his primary position, he's more of a left tackle, has looked decent. He's been pretty good. Will Hernandez has looked good. Froholt has struggled a bit. Wilkinson has struggled mightily, but there's still some things that are good to work with. And I think Johnson Jr., PJJ is going to get better. I think Will Hernandez is going to stay good. I think Froholt will kind of get a little bit better as the season goes out. Wilkinson, I'm not sure. We might end up starting someone else. So the offensive line is mixed, but Wilkinson needs to up his game, or he's going to be out of that starting role. Do you have any thoughts on the offensive line in terms of what you see and or your next take?
No, you're right. Our offensive line looked a lot better this game than they did last week. You got to love the production you're getting out of Paris Johnson Jr. for being a offensive lineman drafted in the first round by the Cardinals, where we have whiffed on that since always. It's not when I guess any team drafts an offensive lineman in the first round of the draft, it's not a sexy pick, but I'm glad that this one's, you can see, is starting to bear fruit. Um, but yeah, that Wilkinson, being at the game, I know they're trying to set up the Hail Mary, then you get the 2 back-to-back false starts and you're getting backed up further and further. Um, I get very into the game, and I'm a yeller. So I'm like yelling, blast him to the moon, get him out of here. So that was extremely frustrating. But no, you're right. Blocking was better. James Conner had some run lanes. And then Dobbs had more time to, get his reads, more time in the pocket or even to escape the pocket. So it was a better outing by them for sure.
Yeah, for sure. So what would be one more take that you had from the game?
Well, everything was looking in all 3 phases in that first half, phenomenal. Then you notice in the second half that, you got to get teams make adjustments. So you got to give the Giants credit. They made adjustments and, they started attacking a little more downfield, kind of exposing our DBs or lack thereof. So Marco had a very rough game. Keitrell Clark was looking like a rookie, even though he did have a takeaway. But you can't rely on your rotating front 7. You've got to bring in some. You got to stress that in this draft to get a corner, get a safety. And I don't know how much of a difference it would have made had Buddha been playing, but it was very rough on
Yeah.
that side of the ball.
No, I mean Clark has been a nice story, and I really like Keitrell Clark, and I think
so do I.
for a 6th round pick, he's played pretty well considering cornerbacks, take a little time to add, adjust the NFL. They struggle a bit, but being a 6th round pick, starting alone is an accomplishment for a 6th round quarterback. His PFF grades have been in the 50s, which isn't great, but it's not abysmal. It's just slightly below average. Like 60 is like, if you graded 60, it's like you never did anything great or horrible. You just did your job kind of normal and didn't make big plays and didn't give up big plays. It averages out to that. So he's a little below average as a starting cornerback, but like for a 6th round pick rookie to be starting and be just a little below average instead of getting exposed, that's a good start. I'm optimistic that he will continue to get better. Obviously, Garrett Williams, whenever he gets back, it'll be interesting to see what he has. He's recovering from injury, probably be a little bit of a while. So yeah, I think, and C level L saying Garrett Williams come back. Maybe I just don't know when he's kind of been on that with an injury designation. I don't know when he will come back. Haven't really heard anything specific about that, but he's a guy that I have a lot of hope for. He was a really nice prospect. Jordan P saying Keitrell has been pretty bad, giving him 8 of 10 targets, 118 yards. Not sure why people are saying he's playing amazing. Yeah, I don't think he's playing amazing. I think I think he is playing reasonably well for a guy who was if a 6th round cornerback is starting and not putting up PFF grades in the 30s or 40s, to me, that's pretty good for that. So Mikey's saying we should have kept Josh Jones. He played well last year. He did play well last year. I've talked about this at length before. I just think unless you were making a long-term commitment to him, which I don't think they were, he was going to walk as a free agent this year. If they're going to be active in free agency this next offseason, then they wouldn't get a compensatory pick for him. So I think they knew that they were going to be active in free agency. I think they knew they weren't going to bring him back. So I think they just decided that, yeah, sure, it'd be nice to have him, but we are playing for the future. Let's get a draft pick for him because, if we're not going anywhere this year and he's going to walk in free agency, might as well get something for him. So I don't hate that.
We flipped that into Josh Dobbs, right?
I'm sorry. Yeah. I don't know if it was that particular pick, but they traded a 5th for Josh Dobbs and they got a 5th, right? So Josh Jones helping AZ playing terrible for Houston. Great trade by Monty, right? So yeah. So I think my last takeaway is, despite the loss and the loss in heartbreaking fashion, I still feel like I'm seeing the things I want to see in terms of the rebuild and the trust the process sort of a thing. They are playing young players, something
Mhm,
we didn't see enough of in the past. Those young players, some of them are showing out. Victor Dimukeje, he's still young, right? Trey
mhm,
McBride, Michael Wilson, we didn't even talk about. He's looked solid. Maybe only he had more yards this time than he did last game, and he's looked solid, right? Paris Johnson Jr. is looking solid. Keitrell Clark is at least getting some starts, getting some play, getting some experience. Um, BJ Ojolari's getting a little bit of play. He's not he's still kind of getting up to speed, but we're seeing the young players get out there and play. We're seeing them get some experience, and some of them are showing out. Some of them are maybe struggling, but at least we're getting them out there. We're seeing a
yes,
team that is competing at more effectively than most people outside of Arizona expected. Because again, a lot of people outside of Arizona expected the Cardinals. They thought, looked at it, said this is the worst roster that they've ever seen. A lot of people were saying, and that they expected this team to get blown out consistently. Well, they didn't get blown
right.
out, right? They're playing hard. I'm seeing some good coaching. Yeah, there were some things you could question some of the decisions, but I think there's game kind of decision kind of thing, like in terms of play sequencing, which plays you call. And then there's coaching in terms of installing your system and coaching players up, and the actual nuts and bolts of the playing. You can question some of the play calls. And I
Mhm,
think, listen, these are young coaches, first time offensive and defensive coordinators, first time head coach. They have a learning curve as well. So I'm
mhm,
going to give them a little pass on that. So the play sequencing, the play calling, maybe there's some questions there, but the coaching and the teaching, the coaching guys up, the way that this defense with a bunch of players that probably wouldn't start other places, right?
right.
Watkins and Collier and Ledbetter, right? And then guys like Dimukeje stepping up, like they're rotating those guys in, they're getting them to be effective, and they're making plays. They are elevating the play. Their coaching is elevating these players. Okay, and no, they're not. It's not good enough. They need more talent. They need to develop their current talent. But you build these foundations, you get the good coaching in, and then as you bring in better players and as your younger players develop, that good coaching continues to elevate the overall level, the rising tide. So I am seeing the things I want to see in terms of establishing the culture, establishing the system. Yes, the results aren't great. There's a saying, and if you follow analytics and roster building, you've maybe heard this. This is also a saying that is used in kind of other realms like corporate worlds, but it's process over results is the saying.
Mhm,
And what that means is if you're focusing on results, you might get a result that's good, but it's by luck or coincidence, and you think, oh, that's great. Like think about the results thing is Cliff's 11-win team, right? That was a result. It was a good result until we got the playoffs. But the process, if you get your process right, the results will come. So you focus on the right process and trust that the results will come. But if you're focusing on the results, and ignoring the process or don't have a good process, you might have occasional good results, but they're not sustainable. The process looks good to me.
mhm.
That's my big takeaway. The process looks right. The results may not be there yet at the level we'd like to see, but that's going to take a couple years with the roster building. So that's my last big takeaway is that overall, I feel like it's on the right track, what I'm seeing.
Could be a lot worse, I say this all the time, but we're playing better than advertised. Granted, we're not getting the wins like, some people might want, but I think everyone is kind of aware right now that, we're not going to be good, but let's go out there and be competitive and put the effort in because this is the cards that we were dealt. We don't have the personnel to go out and do what we want to do necessarily, but some of these guys are getting the reps and the playing time that they needed to take it to the next level. So we might see them at the next level maybe next season or the season after that, but it's kinda all you want right now. Granted it's a loss, but it's like it's probably for a team being up 20 to nothing and then, to lose that game, you would think that everybody is leaving, angry and pissed off, but, everyone's like, "Okay, we played good," and it is what it is. That's all you can ask for. And if this is tanking, this is the most competitive tanking team that I've ever seen. So big picture thing, you got to love what's happening, especially with the coaching, and you got to really appreciate having Kyler Murray as your quarterback. I know a lot of people still are on the outs with Kyler, but I've noticed that the attitude has sort of shifted. Because I've been to the games and I've heard the buzz from fans, saying, "Oh, this short kid, this kid with the attitude." It's always been a lot of negative since he came into the league that I've heard firsthand, by Cardinals fans, and you kind of don't hear that anymore. And then I was sitting next to some Giants fans, and when we were trying to attempt that Hail Mary, the guy standing next to my dad leans over and says, "If Kyler Murray is in right now, he's got the arm, he's got the cannon, he makes this throw." And
Yeah.
what happens? Josh Dobbs is what, 10 yards shy of the end zone. So
Yeah.
opposing fans know it. They know that, that they're getting away with one right now, because if we had a competitive good quarterback in Kyler Murray, we're winning these games.
Yeah, for sure. I agree. And I'm excited to see what happens when Kyler gets back. Folks, if you have any questions you want to ask, get them in the chat. We're going to do a little Q&A before we're going to do a little bit of talking about what we want to see in the next game against the Cowboys, and we'll do a little Q&A before we get out of here. Real quick, Keith says, but process is only relevant if it produces consistent results. Process for the sake of process is just an obsession. I think it's still too early to form any conclusion. Yeah, I mean, that's sort of a truism what you're saying. Of course, process has to lead to results. Process for the sake of process, but no one here is doing process for the sake of process. They're doing process because they know that's the process that wins. Build through the draft, develop players, focus on your cornerstone premier positions in the draft, and then patchwork. And so what I'm saying is, of course, it's too early to draw conclusions, but it's not too early to say, do I think what I'm seeing looks like a good process? That's what listen, if it's too early for that, then I might as well not do any analysis, right? Like, this is what we do, right? We need to look at what tea leaves are there and say, do the signs look good? And to me, based on what I believe is a roster building process, and I put a lot of thought in that. I follow some of the stuff that like Sumer Sports does. Eric Eager does some great stuff. Some with the analytics talk about how you build rosters. Some of the stuff from PFF. I have this kind of clear idea of what I think roster building should look like. Year one, you clear the decks of aging players with bloated contracts that are not part of the long-term future. I love DeAndre Hopkins, but moving on from him was the right decision. So year one is clear that, and then start accumulating draft picks and players and get the core players in there and building. It's going to be a rough year in year one, but year one is all about establishing culture and installing systems and getting things right and trying to bring in some talent. Right. And then year two is when you start bringing in the talent that you brought in year one, the young players like PJJ and Ojulari and Michael Wilson. They're one more year in, you bring another infusion of draft talent, and then you bring maybe a few more free agent pieces. And in year two, you want to be frisky. You want to be that team that's a tough out, maybe is kind of sniffing the playoffs, but probably doesn't make it, right? Maybe you do if you get, maybe we already have a quarterback, so maybe we do. So year two, you're in that next step. And then year three, you should be in the playoffs. And what you've done is by starting out that first year by focusing on the draft, when you hit that stride in year three, your elite players are still on the rookie deal. And in year four, they're still on the rookie deal. Year five, you start having to pay that first year of guys. And that's fine. You do that because you've built through the draft all the way. So like, that's kind of the process. So when I say that I like what I'm seeing, it is through that lens. It's that very clear idea I have of what roster building looks like, where year one is clear the decks, bring in young players, get them playing, install the systems and the culture. Well, it looks like the systems are taking hold because some of those players who aren't great players are still getting the job done. That tells me the system is working. They're playing hard, and they're disciplined, and they're showing up to meetings on time. All that stuff. That tells me the culture is taking hold. So there's specific things I'm looking for within that whole kind of framework of what roster building looks like. So when I say, and hopefully if you watch my stuff, I put different levels of thinking into things. Like there's always layers under what I'm thinking beyond just what I'm saying. That's just kind of how this brain up here works. So when I say I like what I'm seeing, it is with very specific things in mind that are connected to bigger ideas I have of how the roster building should look. And the signs I'm seeing say the process looks like I think it should. So yeah, but no, that's absolutely, and thank you, Keith. Fair. Yeah. And listen, that was a fair question. Right. And so, I think it deserved in-depth, response. So I appreciate you, Keith, though. You're great support of the channel. Agent 47, 0-5 in 5 weeks. Probably, to be honest. Right. So we'll see. Jordan P saying Kyler's had his highs, but the consistency hasn't been there. Lack of accountability, study clause is alarming. We have to hope he's changed or take care 1,000%. I think if anyone saw that Johnny Manziel documentary with interviews from Cliff Kingsbury, I know a lot of people talked about that. I think that maybe some of that was on Cliff not expecting some, but everything we're hearing out of the building is that Kyler's committing to what they want. So we'll see. So I'm optimistic. Keith, thank you very kindly. I watched consistently because I like the depth of your thinking. Thank you. I really appreciate that. That means a lot. Thank you, Keith. We got Coley Jack saying, if we don't turn the ball over against Cowboys, no matter the score, I would consider that a win. That's a great, listen, we're going to be outmatched based on personnel. So if we can do that, right, that's a big win. Agent 47, if they stick with K1, that means that all our concerns about him are not anymore. Here's hoping. Everyone knows I'm team Kyler. So that's what I want them to build around him. So we'll see. If Kyler's at quarterback, I believe anything's possible. Listen, I love Kyler, but you all know that.
Yeah.
All right, Jackie. So going into the Cowboys game, what are the things that you want to see out of that game from the Cardinals?
What I'm looking forward to, not necessarily looking forward to, but just kind of seeing what we really get out of Paris Johnson going up against Micah Fitzpatrick. What? No, Micah Parsons.
Yeah,
Micah Parsons. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Too many M's in the league. No, but no, that is the thing, is that, what is this line going to look like against the Dallas pass rush? Because the Dallas pass rush scares me. Seeing if, like they said, if we don't turn the ball over, big moral victory. We could be down, 40-0, and hey, as long as we didn't turn the ball over, that's all you can really ask for. But on the flip side of it, Cowboys played a terrible Giants team. Granted, we're terrible too, and we lost to the Giants. They played the Jets minus Aaron Rodgers. So we'll see because I have a friend that's a Cowboys fan. He was there at the game Sunday, and I'm like, man, you guys are gonna, whoop us. And he goes, I'm holding my breath because those are the games that the Cowboys tend to lose.
Right.
So I mean, any given Sunday, you never know what's gonna happen.
Yeah. Okay. Why don't I talk about Lincoln Riley as a head coach? Because I think it's a ridiculous topic. It's not going to happen. That's why I don't talk about it. I know Phil has been commenting that I don't talk about it because it's ridiculous. Sorry.
No college coaches anymore.
Yeah, no more college coaches. Yeah, I know a lot of people like that. Like, he's a great college coach. No. So anyway, that's why I don't. Sorry, not sorry. Yeah, no, I think that's a really important thing. We need to see. Would really like to see PJJ hold up against the pass rush of Dallas, right? They, that's something we'd definitely like to see. Here's what I want to see. It's a little more general. I want to see the Cardinals defense not get completely destroyed, right?
Right.
Like in terms of not getting blown out, because the Cowboys have, a really good defense and a good offense. They're an explosive team, CeeDee Lamb, right? There's just so many things. And our cornerbacks, the way they played, Marco Wilson particularly played last week, is going to have his hands full. This is a tough matchup.
Yes.
And what I want to see is that between the players and the coaching staff and their preparations, that they have a game plan and execution that is good enough to have the Cardinals at least not get blown out. I know that's a low bar, but we've talked about this. The talent level they need to develop the young players. They don't have the talent level to run. They don't have the horses to run with the best teams in the league. And the Cowboys appear to be that one of them, certainly in NFC. So for me, like if the Cardinals just look respectable, I think that's a win in terms of, because I think people are going to expect the Cardinals to get blown out. Right. So to me, that's one of the things I really want to see, from the Cardinals in this game, is see them just look respectable and show that, okay, yeah, they hung in there with two bad teams and almost, had a close game, but can they, against a good team, also keep it from being a blowout? If we can see that, I'm going to feel like that is progress for this team, considering where we're at.
And to that point, I guess my overall, like, my thing is just don't look silly.
Yeah.
Because I've seen it with a Cliff Kingsbury coached team, us come out and look absolutely silly. Silly play calling, silly timeouts, silly coaching, just look competent. That's all I ask.
Yeah.
The bar is on the floor, but just look like you belong in the NFL. Don't look like a junior college team.
Yeah, for sure. I got a question here from HGW 14. Can I ask, from a tactic strategy point of view, what did the Giants change at halftime last Sunday? Changed the game so much. So, I'm not 100% certain what it was. I want someone in the Discord. I think Dana mentioned that she thought that they played a more cover 3. Listen, they were playing from behind, so they were throwing the ball a lot more, right? So I think the biggest change was that they were passing more, and the Cardinals defense was probably shifting to more of a bend but don't break defense, which you could say that was maybe a mistake, right? So the Giants were taking shots deep. Certainly Jalen Hyatt had a couple of nice plays. But I think
Daniel Jones ran.
Right, Daniel Jones. And then when they're playing against the pass, Daniel Jones has a little more room to run, right? So I think that's probably part of it. And I think, and Jordan P is saying, they started running a bunch of play action and cover 3 beaters. So safeties kept coming into the play action, leaving quarterbacks one-on-one. Yeah. And, when with cover 3, you can attack the seams, and there's some other things you can do, like anytime there's a zone defense, you can load up on one side of the field, so there's more receivers than there are defenders. So there's things like that. And I also think, as Jordan mentioned, the one-on-one, they Marco Wilson got beat, Keitrell Clark had some issues. So I think it is some of that stuff that was going on. So yeah. So it was rough. So anything else you want to see, or anything else you want to talk about before we kind of wrap this up, Jackie?
Yeah. I noticed that, granted, maybe it's just because Dog had an extra week in the building, but I did notice the play calling was a lot better this week with Petzing. And if this is a kind of a preview of what the offense is going to be like with Kyler, I'm all in. Run heavy, horizontal, or no more horizontal running. A lot of north and south, and then more play action. And I'm surprised, given Kyler Murray's skill set, that we haven't seen more design QB runs and more play action in his this is going to be his 5th year in the league.
Yeah, Cliff's system just didn't seem to really emphasize that. And listen, I've talked about this before, and let me real quick, as a quick little kind of preview. This morning I recorded a podcast with Walter Mitchell and Kyle Ledbetter for the Take It Easy podcast. I've done a couple of things with them before. It's going to be out sometime in the next couple of days. I'll share that. And we talked about this question of tanking, and we also talked about the Cardinals in general, what they're doing. We talked about this thing with Kyler, and one of the things that I am really looking forward to, and this is something I've mentioned before, is when you look at what the Browns did with Baker Mayfield in that one season that was kind of his best season. They ran the ball a lot, and they did a lot of play action and bootleg stuff and rolled him out and got him out kind of in space. And Baker Mayfield thrived in that. And I think Kyler Murray will kill it in that kind of offense if they do that. when you get him, rolling out in bootlegs, what happens is instead of him getting the pocket and then ejecting when the pressure comes, you're immediately already kind of making it happen. So before the pressure gets to him and you get him out in space, the defense then has to deal with both his running potential and the throw. And when he's out in space, his ability to see the field is a little, everyone talks about the middle of the field. His height is that an issue? Well, you get him out there in space, and then that opens up for him to see, and his ability to improvise, which I think is one of his best skills, is a little bit more, more on display. And Mayfield had a really, really good season in that system, and I think Kyler has a better arm and better legs than Mayfield. So I look forward to seeing what they're going to do to make the most of Kyler's strengths. So we'll see what happens with this. But I am pretty excited to see what they're going to do with Kyler, and Kyler in an offense I think is a better fit for the NFL. So I think we're going to wrap this up and get out of here. Jackie, anything you want to say or anything you want to shout out before we get out of here?
Nothing. If anybody is going to the Bengals game, I will be there too. So don't be afraid to say hello. Buy me a beer. But I will be streaming with the Redbird Red Zone podcasts coming up Thursday at 6 p.m. So if you liked my analysis and you want the R-rated version of what I'm saying, uncensored, then come hang out with us at the AZ Sports Underground YouTube channel. But that's it.
Awesome. Jackie, thanks for being here. It's always fun to hang out with you. Thank you everyone for being in the chat, hanging out with us. Remember to check out Jackie on the Redbird Red Zone podcast with her buddies Mac and the rest of the crew. It's a lot of fun. I try to get in the chat and hang out when I can. Good times, lots of beer. So make sure you check that out. And then make sure you check out again my live streams on Monday night, Making the Grade, looking at the PFF grades, and then Tuesday night, our more general conversation. Thank you all for being here, hanging out with us. I'm going to put up the shout outs to the channel members. If you want to support the channel as a member, there should be a link below to do that. Definitely appreciate all those folks. So we're going to get out of here. See y'all later. Peace.
Hey, yo, it's Joe. He's the host of my